When the Jin dynasty unified the empire, it seemed as if the centuries of chaos had finally ended. The armies that had once torn the land apart now marched under one banner. Fields long scorched by war began to green again, roads reopened. The emperor, Sima, posthumously Emperor Wu, ruled from Luoyang with confidence that the age of division was over. He had conquered rivals through calculation and luck, and to prevent new ones from rising, he designed a system that he believed would guarantee eternal peace. It was elegant in theory, fatal in practice. He distributed power among his clan. Dozens of imperial princes received titles and territories, each controlling armies and tax bases in the provinces. It was meant to balance the throne's power, an empire run by family, bound by blood. But the emperor underestimated one truth: the closer the kinship, the deeper the resentment. When Emperor Wu died, the system fell into the hands of a successor unprepared for the throne. Emperor Hui was kind, gentle, and incapable of ruling. He signed what was placed before him and believed what he was told. The empire effectively belonged to the court around him. The first regent, Yang Jun, held the army and the Empress Dowager's trust. He moved to eliminate anyone who could challenge him, including the imperial princes. But his arrogance provoked the empress's wife, Empress Jia Nanfeng, a woman whose intelligence matched her ruthlessness. She forged decrees, turned generals to her side, and ordered Yang Jun's death. His clan was exterminated. Her victory created a precedent. From that point forward, any power struggle in Luoyang would be settled not by words, but by blood. With Yang Jun gone, Empress Jia ruled openly. She controlled the emperor, issued orders in his name, and silenced those who questioned her. The empire's stability depended entirely on the fear she inspired. But outside the palace, the princes were watching. They saw a regent destroyed by a coup and a woman ruling through manipulation. They also saw opportunity. The first to act was Prince Sima of Runan, a respected elder statesman, cautious and sincere. Together with Prince Sima Wei of Chu, a hot-blooded commander stationed near the capital, they planned to remove Empress Jia and restore proper rule. Their plan failed before it began. The empress struck first. Both princes were executed, one in the palace, the other lured into a trap. Their deaths sent a message to the rest of the imperial clan. Power in Jin could no longer be shared. It had to be seized. The cycle began. In the following decade, 8 princes of the House of Sima would rise and fall in succession, each claiming to act in defense of the emperor, each leaving the empire weaker than before. Historians would later call it the War of the 8 Princes, though there was no single war, only a series of coups and campaigns that together devoured the state. The first upheaval came from Sima Lun, Prince of Zhao. He was shrewd and opportunistic, the kind of man who thrived in confusion. After years of quiet service, he aligned himself with officials who despised Empress Jia. He waited until her allies turned against her, then moved swiftly. She was arrested, forced to drink poison, and her body buried without ceremony. The court rejoiced. But celebration turned to fear when Sima Lun took the next step. He declared that Emperor Hui was unfit to rule and enthroned himself as emperor. The justification was thin, but his army was large and his propaganda worked, at least for a few months. Then the princes who had supported him realized what he intended. In a rare moment of unity, they rose together. Princes Jiang of Qi, Ai of Changsha, and Ying of Chengdu formed an alliance to restore the legitimate emperor. Sima Lan's soldiers were defeated outside Luoyang. His officials abandoned him. Within a year, he was captured and executed. The coalition restored Emperor Hui, but the lesson was unmistakable. Armed rebellion worked. What followed was a contest of guardianship. Whoever controlled the emperor controlled the empire.
Prince Sima Jiang, who had led the campaign against Sima Lun, became the next regent. He was competent but arrogant, relying on a circle of flatterers who persuaded him that his authority was unshakable. He filled the administration with his followers and sidelined rival princes. Among those rivals was Sima I, Prince of Changsha, a principled man who believed the emperor should be protected, not manipulated. When Sima Jiang's excesses provoked unrest, Sima I led the palace guard to remove him. The city of Luoyang turned into a battlefield of cousins. Palaces burned, civilians fled, and the emperor himself narrowly escaped death. Sima Jiang was captured and executed, his followers slaughtered. Sima I took control of the court, but the victory was short-lived.
Far to the north, Prince Sima Ying of Chengdu, the emperor's brother, commanded the armies of Ye, a vast garrison city and economic center. He believed himself the only prince capable of restoring order. Using the pretext of punishing rebels, he marched south toward Luoyang. Sima I fought bravely. For months, his smaller army held the capital, winning the admiration of the city's people. But Sima Ying's generals, supported by another prince, Sima Yong of Heizhan, eventually encircled Luoyang. Supplies ran out. The capital starved. In desperation, court officials betrayed Sima I. He was captured and executed, burned alive in the marketplace. The empire shuddered. Each year, another prince rose and fell. Another city bled. With Sima I gone, Sima Ying became the most powerful figure in Jin. He moved the emperor to his own headquarters in Ye and declared himself crown prince. From there, he issued orders to the provinces and restructured the court, replacing officials with men from his own faction. His power, though real, rested on fragile loyalty. Governors and commanders across the empire began ignoring orders. The central authority that had once held China together was breaking apart. In the West, Sima Yong, the strategist who had helped destroy Sima I, now feared that Sima Ying's success would make him the next target. He formed an alliance of his own with frontier generals in Guangzhou. Among them was Zhang Fang, a brutal but loyal commander. In the following years, the balance between princes collapsed entirely. Armies marched across the Central Plains under banners all claiming to serve the same emperor. Each side demanded grain, soldiers, and loyalty from the same towns. Entire provinces were drained of men. As Sima Ying and Sima Yong fought for dominance, a new figure emerged, Prince Sima Yue of Donghai. Cautious, calculating, and pragmatic, he had remained on the margins of earlier conflicts. Now, seeing the empire ruined by repeated coups, he began to assemble a coalition of regional governors to restore the emperor to Luoyang and re-establish the old order. But to do that, he would first have to confront Sima Yong, who controlled the emperor's person. In 304, Zhang Fang seized Emperor Hui from Ye and escorted him west to Chang'an. It was an act both daring and catastrophic. By carrying the emperor into his territory, Sima Yong made himself indispensable and universally feared. The message was clear. Legitimacy was no longer defined by tradition or law, but by proximity. The move shocked the princes in the east. It confirmed their worst suspicion, that the empire had become a hostage. Sima Yue responded by forming what became known as the Eastern Armies, a coalition of provincial forces led by governors and generals who still believed the dynasty could be saved. For nearly 2 years, civil war raged between East and West. The fighting was brutal and wasteful. Armies numbering in the hundreds of thousands consumed what little food remained. Villages were stripped bare. Canals dried up. The countryside turned to ash. Soldiers deserted to bandit bands, and refugees wandered in the thousands. In 306, Sima Yue's forces finally broke through to Chang'an. Zhang Fang was captured and executed. Sima fled and was soon killed by his own subordinates. The emperor, pale and silent, was escorted back to Luoyang under heavy guard. The war, in theory, was over. In reality, there was nothing left to govern. The provinces had become independent in all but name. Local commanders collected their own taxes and ignored imperial decrees. The treasury was empty. The population, once counted in the tens of millions, had scattered. Some migrated south, seeking safety beyond the Yangtze. Others fled north and joined emerging tribal confederations.
The greatest beneficiaries of the Jin family's feud were the groups along the frontier. Xiongnu, Ji, and other peoples long settled within the northern borders. With the Jin armies crippled by civil war, these groups filled the vacuum. Among them was Lu Yuan, a Xiongnu noble educated in Chinese classics who declared himself king and founded a new regime in the north. His generals, among them Shi Lei and Wang Mi, commanded armies formed from refugees and deserters. To them, the Jin Empire was no longer a ruler but a resource. In 307, these forces began their campaigns into the Central Plains. The Jin generals, exhausted from fighting each other, could barely respond. Cities surrendered out of hunger. By 311, Luoyang, once the heart of empire, fell. The event became known as the Disaster of Yangtze. The city was looted, the imperial palace burned. Tens of thousands were killed. Emperor Huai, successor to the long-suffering Emperor Hui, was taken captive and later executed. The remnants of the Jin court fled west to Chang'an, only for that city to fall soon after. By the mid-310s, the entire north had disintegrated into a mosaic of small kingdoms ruled by former frontier generals and warlords. The Western Jin dynasty had ceased to exist. The court that survived retreated to the south across the Great River, where it established the Eastern Jin. It would last another century, but it was a different kind of state, defensive, smaller, forever haunted by what had been lost. The War of the Eight Princes lasted only a few years, but its consequences stretched across generations. What began as a contest for the throne became a collapse of civilization. The princes themselves, one after another, were executed, poisoned, or left to die in exile. Their names became shorthand for arrogance and folly. In the records written after the dynasty's fall, chroniclers tried to calculate the cost. One account claimed that half the population of China had perished, a clear exaggeration, but not without meaning. The devastation was so complete that entire counties disappeared from census rolls. The war's pattern was simple. Each prince rose in the name of loyalty, fought in the name of order, and destroyed both. None set out to ruin the dynasty, yet all contributed. Their motivations were familiar: fear, pride, ambition. But multiplied by bloodline and bureaucracy, they became a machine of annihilation. It is difficult to find heroes in this story. Sima Ai's courage, Sima Yu's persistence, Sima Ying's brief popularity, all are overshadowed by the destruction they helped sustain. The empire's unity had been won through conquest, but it could not be maintained through kinship. The very system designed to protect the throne guaranteed its ruin. As the wars dragged on, what once had been moral justifications turned to routine. Each new uprising claimed to avenge the emperor or defend the dynasty. In truth, none knew what they were defending anymore. The empire had become an echo, its rituals performed out of habit, its institutions hollowed out by suspicion. When the northern plains finally fell silent, they were dotted with ruins. Cities that had flourished under Emperor Wu's peace lay deserted. The canal system that once carried grain from the south to Luoyang was broken. Famine stalked the land for decades. In the south, the émigré elites who rebuilt under the Eastern gene preserved what they could of the old civilization. Its laws, its scholarship, its memory. But even they spoke of the War of the Eight Princes as the moment when the old order died.
They understood that the dynasty's collapse had not been caused by invaders or revolutionaries, but by the logic of its own design. The princes had not betrayed the system, they had fulfilled it. The structure that gave them power demanded that they use it. Once one prince raised an army, the others could not remain still. The empire's peace contained its own destruction. Later historians divided the conflict into phases and named its participants: the moral prince, the usurper, the loyalist, the schemer. But beneath these titles lay the same tragedy: a government that no longer believed in itself. By the time foreign armies crossed the northern rivers, the Jin had already collapsed in spirit. No decree could summon loyalty. No ritual could hide the rot. The War of the Eight Princes was, in essence, not about 8 men, but about a system that mistook blood for trust. The dynasty's founders had believed that family would bind the empire together. Instead, it tied its fate to rivalry. Once the first blow was struck, the Eight Princes' vengeance became irreversible. In the final reckoning, there were no victors, only survivors. The name of the dynasty endured in the south, but the north descended into the age of the 5 barbarians and 16 kingdoms, a landscape of shifting regimes that would take centuries to reunify. And in the ruins of Luoyang, where palaces had once glittered with bronze mirrors and golden statues, only scorched foundations remained. The empire that had once conquered all of China had destroyed itself without foreign invasion. That was the legacy of the War of the Eight Princes, an empire that mistook kinship for stability and peace for permanence.